Marcus Sullivan hadn't slept more than 4 hours in 23 days. His hands trembled as he poured his third cup of coffee at 11:30 on a Thursday night, the bitter liquid doing little to fight the exhaustion that had settled into his bones like winter frost. The apartment was silent except for the hum of his laptop and the soft breathing of his 7-year-old daughter Emma sleeping in the next room. He had 30 minutes left before the next deadline from Chamberlain Tech would arrive in his inbox, and he knew with crushing certainty that there would be another one after that, and another one after that, stretching into the weekend like an endless highway with no exit in sight. Marcus was drowning, and the woman who held his livelihood in her perfectly manicured hands seemed entirely indifferent to the fact that he was barely keeping his head above water. If you believe in second chances, if you believe that kindness can break through even the coldest walls, then please hit that like button right now. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity. Drop a comment telling us about a time when someone showed up for you when you needed it most. Victoria Chamberlain had built her empire on precision, efficiency, and an unwavering refusal to accept anything less than perfection. The tech industry knew her as the Ice Queen who had turned a struggling software company into a billion-dollar empire in just 8 years. What they didn't know was that she measured her worth in quarterly reports and profit margins because it was easier than measuring it in the relationships she had sacrificed along the way. Marcus Sullivan was just another name on her organizational chart, a talented data analyst who could handle the workload she demanded, or so she thought. She had noticed his exceptional work on the Peterson account, which is why she had handpicked him for the Riverside merger, the biggest deal Chamberlain Tech had ever attempted. The merger required analysis of thousands of data points, financial projections, and risk assessments, all of which needed to be completed on an impossible timeline. Victoria didn't concern herself with the personal lives of her employees. Results were what mattered, and Marcus was delivering results, even if those results came at 2 in the morning. Marcus had been a different person 2 years ago. He had been a husband, a father, a man who left work at 5:30 to make it home for dinner. Then Sarah had gotten sick, the cancer moving through her body faster than any of the doctors had predicted. He had held her hand through the chemotherapy, the radiation, the desperate experimental treatments that drained their savings and filled him with false hope. Emma had been only 5 years old when her mother died, too young to fully understand why Mama wasn't coming home from the hospital. Marcus had made a promise at Sarah's bedside that he would give their daughter the best life possible, that he would be both mother and father, that Emma would never feel the absence of love even though she would always feel the absence of her mother. That promise was why he couldn't afford to lose this job, why he swallowed his exhaustion and his frustration and kept working through the night while his daughter slept. The weeks blurred together in a haze of spreadsheets and conference calls. Marcus would drop Emma off at school, work through the day at the office, pick her up and help her with homework while simultaneously responding to emails, make her dinner while reviewing reports, tuck her into bed while his phone buzzed with new assignments, and then work until the early morning hours. He stopped going to the gym. He stopped calling his friends. He stopped doing anything that wasn't absolutely essential to keeping Emma safe and keeping Victoria Chamberlain satisfied with his output. His sister Rachel had started calling more frequently, concern evident in her voice as she listened to how tired he sounded. She offered to take Emma for weekends, to help with childcare, but Marcus was too proud and too afraid that accepting help meant admitting he was failing at the promise he had made to Sarah. The breaking point came on a Friday night in late October. Emma had a school play the next morning, a production of Peter Pan where she was playing Wendy. She had been practicing her lines for weeks, her small voice filling their apartment with excitement and anticipation. Marcus had promised he would be there, had circled the date on the calendar in red marker, had assured her that nothing would keep him from watching her perform. But at 9 o'clock that night, Victoria had sent an email marked urgent, demanding a complete revision of the Riverside financial projections by Sunday morning. The data she wanted didn't exist in any organized form. It would require pulling information from a dozen different sources, cross-referencing historical patterns, and building entirely new models from scratch. Marcus stared at the email until the words blurred, and then he quietly got up and checked on Emma, who was sleeping peacefully with her Wendy costume hanging carefully on her closet door. He worked through the night, his eyes burning, his head pounding, his heart breaking, as he realized he would have to choose between his daughter's happiness and his job security. At 6 in the morning, he made the choice that would haunt him. He called Rachel and asked if she could take Emma to the play. His voice cracked as he explained that something had come up at work, something he couldn't get out of, and could she please record it so he could watch it later. Emma's face, when he told her, was something he would never forget. She didn't cry or scream or throw a tantrum. She just looked at him with those large brown eyes that were so much like Sarah's and said quietly that it was okay. She understood, but it wasn't okay, and the understanding in her 7-year-old voice was worse than any anger could have been. Victoria Chamberlain didn't make a habit of checking in on her employees' personal circumstances, but she did make a habit of tracking their digital footprints within the company system. On Saturday afternoon, while reviewing the weekend work submissions, she noticed that Marcus had been logged into the system for 72 consecutive hours. Something about that number bothered her in a way she couldn't quite articulate. She pulled up his file and saw that he had submitted every assignment on time, had exceeded expectations on every project, had never once complained or asked for an extension. She also saw that he had used exactly 0 of his paid time off in the 18 months he had worked for her. On an impulse she didn't fully understand, she did something she never did. She looked him up on social media. The photos hit her differently than she expected. Marcus Sullivan holding a small girl with curly brown hair and a bright smile. Marcus Sullivan and the same little girl at a cemetery, placing flowers on a grave. Marcus Sullivan looking exhausted but trying to smile as his daughter showed him a drawing. Victoria spent an hour reading through old posts, piecing together the story of a man who had lost his wife to cancer and was raising his daughter alone. She saw posts from friends expressing concern, saw his sister Rachel practically begging him to accept help, saw the gradual disappearance of any posts about hobbies or interests, or anything that wasn't his daughter or his work. Victoria closed her laptop and sat in her pristine penthouse office, surrounded by the trophies of her success, and felt something she hadn't felt in years: shame. She spent Sunday researching, reading articles about work-life balance and employee burnout and the particular challenges faced by single parents. She looked at her own life with new eyes, seeing the emptiness that all her success had created. Her parents were gone. Her siblings barely spoke to her. She had acquaintances and business partners, but no real friends. She had built an empire, but she had built it on the foundation of human cost, and Marcus Sullivan was just one of many people she had used up in pursuit of profit. The realization didn't come with lightning bolt clarity. It came slowly, uncomfortably, like waking up from a long sleep and discovering you had been dreaming someone else's life. Monday morning, Victoria cleared her schedule. She personally reviewed every assignment she had given Marcus over the past month and reassigned half of them to other team members. She drafted a new company policy on mandatory time off and reasonable working hours. And then, on Monday evening, she did something unprecedented. She found Marcus Sullivan's home address in the employee database and drove across the city to his apartment building. It was just past midnight when she knocked on his door. Marcus opened it with confusion and fear written across his exhausted face, probably wondering if he was about to be fired in the middle of the night. Victoria Chamberlain stood in the hallway of his modest apartment building, this billionaire in a designer coat, looking more uncertain than he had ever seen her look. She didn't apologize immediately. Instead, she asked if she could come in, and when Marcus numbly stepped aside, she walked into his small living room and saw the evidence of his life spread out before her. Emma's drawings on the refrigerator, toys neatly organized in the corner, a photo of Sarah on the mantel, the laptop still open on the coffee table with his work displayed on the screen. Victoria sat down uninvited and began to talk. She told him about her own parents, immigrants who had worked themselves to death so she could have opportunities they never had. She told him about her obsession with success, her belief that worth was measured in achievement, her gradual realization that she had become the kind of boss her father would have hated. She told him that she had reviewed his file, had seen what she had been doing to him, and that it stopped now, not next week, not after the Riverside merger, now. Marcus listened in stunned silence as this woman who had been making his life miserable for weeks transformed before his eyes into someone vulnerable and human. Victoria told him that she was implementing new policies immediately, that he would have a team to support him, that he would have protected family time that could not be violated by any deadline. She told him that she was giving him 2 weeks of paid leave starting immediately to spend time with his daughter. And then she said something that broke through all his defenses. She told him that his daughter needed him more than Chamberlain Tech did, and that she was sorry it had taken her so long to remember that employees were human beings with lives and loves and losses that mattered more than any profit margin. The tears came then, weeks of exhaustion and grief and fear pouring out of Marcus in harsh sobs that he tried to muffle so he wouldn't wake Emma. Victoria didn't try to comfort him with empty platitudes. She just sat there, this powerful woman who ruled a billion-dollar empire, and witnessed his pain without trying to fix it, or minimize it, or rush past it. If this story has touched your heart, if you've ever felt invisible in your own struggle, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with a heart emoji if you believe people can change, if you believe that compassion can break through even the hardest exterior. Your engagement helps this message reach people who need hope. The next morning, Marcus woke up to find a detailed email from Victoria outlining the new support structure for his projects, the team members who would be sharing his workload, and a personal note reiterating that his daughter was his first priority. He also found a separate email informing him that Chamberlain Tech would be establishing a foundation to support employees dealing with family health, crises, and single parents, and asking if he would be willing to consult on its development. Over the following weeks, Marcus watched as Victoria Chamberlain transformed not just his working conditions, but the entire culture of Chamberlain Tech. She instituted strict limits on after-hours communication. She hired additional staff to prevent burnout. She started leading by example, leaving the office at reasonable hours and encouraging her executives to do the same. The Riverside merger still happened, but it happened with a team of well-rested, supported employees rather than a handful of exhausted workers pushed beyond their limits. Marcus made it to every single one of Emma's school events after that. He started sleeping regular hours. He accepted help from Rachel. He slowly rebuilt a life that included joy and rest alongside work and responsibility. And Victoria discovered that a company built on respecting human dignity was actually more successful than one built on exploitation. Productivity increased, retention improved, innovation flourished when people had the energy and space to think creatively. The two of them never became close friends. The professional boundary remained. But there was a mutual respect now, an understanding that people were complex and capable of change, that a single moment of courage and honesty could redirect the course of multiple lives. Before we end this story, I want you to do something. Comment below and tell us, I believe in second chances. Let's fill this comment section with hope and positivity. 5 months after that midnight visit, Emma's school held a career day. Victoria Chamberlain showed up as a guest speaker, and she told a room full of second graders about the importance of kindness, about how success means nothing if it comes at the cost of your humanity, about how the bravest thing she ever did was admit she was wrong and choose to change. Emma raised her hand and said that sounded like something her dad would say. Victoria smiled and agreed that Marcus Sullivan was indeed a very wise man, and that sometimes the people we overlook are the ones with the most important lessons to teach us. Marcus stood at the back of the classroom, watching his daughter beam with pride, and felt Sarah's presence like a warm hand on his shoulder. He had kept his promise. Emma was loved, supported, and happy. And he had learned that asking for help wasn't breaking a promise. Sometimes the strongest thing you could do was admit you were struggling and let people show up for you. The story of the billionaire who showed up at midnight spread through Chamberlain Tech and beyond, becoming a reminder that change is always possible, that compassion can appear in unexpected moments, and that the most powerful thing any of us can do is see the humanity in each other and choose connection over indifference. Because in the end, success measured in dollars and deadlines meant nothing compared to success measured in lives touched, families preserved, and the quiet dignity of treating people as if their lives and loves matter just as much as any bottom line.